1. Let me tell you about this sweet 1979 Chevy Scottsdale C10 that just popped up on Craigslist for $10,400. This is one of those classic American pickups that just oozes character, and I've got to say this one's catching my eye. We're looking at a long bed configuration with a 350 V8 under the hood, you know, that bulletproof Chevy small block that's become legendary in the truck world. The odometer shows just 96,000 miles, which is pretty reasonable for a 44-year-old truck. That orange paint really makes it stand out, and according to the seller, this Scottsdale is in excellent condition. It's rocking an automatic transmission, which makes it a comfortable daily driver if you're into that. At 6 feet high and 18.5 feet long, she's definitely got presence. What's really nice is that it comes with a clean title and current registration. No hassles there. The VIN checks out as a legitimate '79 model, and honestly, at $10,400, while it's not cheap, it's in the ballpark for a well-maintained classic C10, especially given the current market for vintage trucks. Just remember, even with excellent condition claims, any 40-plus-year-old vehicle will need some TLC, so I'd still recommend a thorough inspection before pulling the trigger. But man, these C10s are just getting more desirable every year, and this one looks like it could be a solid buy for the right enthusiast. 2. Let me tell you about this absolutely fascinating 1972 GMC Sprint that's up for grabs at $25,000. For those who might not know, this is basically GMC's version of the El Camino. And man, this one's special. We're looking at a seriously upgraded muscle car truck hybrid that's got some serious power under the hood. The original 402 big block, which GMC marketed as a 400, has been rebuilt into a 427, and it's sitting pretty with an aluminum intake and a 290 thumper cam. That combination must sound absolutely glorious through that 2.5-inch dual exhaust. The powertrain is completed with a sturdy TH400 transmission and a 12-bolt rear end, which is exactly what you want for handling all that power. What's really catching my eye is the fact that this is a New Mexico car, and that means no rust, which is huge for these classics. It's got all the comfort features too: original AC, power steering, and power brakes, with the brake system recently refreshed. They've even got it rolling on period-correct 14 inches wheels. Now about that odometer showing 22,155. The seller's honest about it having rolled over, so we're looking at 155 plus miles realistically. But here's the thing. For a well-maintained Southwest vehicle from 1972, that's not a deal breaker at all. At $25K, you're buying into a pretty exclusive club. These Sprints are much rarer than their Chevy cousins. And with these performance upgrades and solid bones from a dry climate, it could be a smart investment for the right enthusiast. Just remember to verify all those mechanical upgrades if you're serious about buying. 3. Let me tell you about this interesting 1982 Ford Bronco that's popped up for $18,500. This isn't your typical Bronco build. Instead of the usual V8, we're looking at a modified Ford 300 inline-6, which is honestly one of the most bulletproof engines Ford ever made. And this one's got some serious upgrades. The owner's done some impressive mechanical work here. They've rebuilt the T18 4-speed manual, you know, the one with that awesome crawler gear for off-roading, added an Offenhauser aluminum intake, Holley 394-barrel carb, and Summit Racing HPDI distributor. With custom stainless dual exhaust and headman headers, they're claiming about a 50% power increase over stock. That's pretty substantial for these old straight sixes. The odometer shows 54,000 miles, though like most classics, that number's questionable. What's really interesting is the maintenance history. The previous owner, a car restorer, gave it a thorough undercarriage cleaning and even pulled the engine to check the bearings. The current seller's only put about 2,500 miles on it in 4 years, so it hasn't seen much action lately. Now let's be honest about the cosmetics. It's got some dings and minor rust spots, pretty typical for these bullnose Broncos, so it's not perfect. The seller's upfront about it needing some bodywork and paint to really shine, but mechanically, with all the new front-end components and steering parts, plus a new master cylinder, it sounds like a solid driver. 4. I've got to be completely honest with you about this 1971 GMC pickup listing at $29,995. While it's a desirable year for these classic trucks, the listing is surprisingly bare bones and raises some red flags we need to discuss. There's no information about the engine or transmission, which is pretty crucial information for a truck at this price point. The odometer shows 11,685 miles, but without any supporting documentation or history, we can't verify if this is original or after a rollover. The VIN number provided looks a bit suspicious too. Starting with zeros isn't typical for a 71 GMC. The truck appears to be blue with a gray interior, but without more details about condition, modifications, or restoration history, it's really hard to justify that nearly $30K asking price. In today's market, while classic GMC pickups from this era can command good money when properly restored or in excellent original condition, you'd want a lot more information before considering this kind of investment. I'd strongly recommend anyone interested in this truck to request detailed photos, maintenance records, and a thorough history before moving forward. The lack of basic information in the listing makes it impossible to properly evaluate whether this is a fair deal or not. 5. Let me tell you about this 1970 Ford F-250 that's popped up for $8,500. Let's be completely honest here. This is a project truck that needs some attention, but it could be worth considering for the right person. We're looking at a 4x4 setup with the 360 V8 engine and a 4-speed transmission. Note, the listing contradicts itself between automatic and 4-speed, so you'll want to verify this. The odometer shows 100,000 miles, but as with most classics of this age, take that number with a grain of salt. Now here's where we need to be real. The seller admits this truck has been sitting for years, and that's always a red flag. The fuel tanks need to be drained and cleaned out due to old fuel, which is just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to reviving a long-sitting vehicle. While the seller says it runs good and is in good shape, any vehicle that's been sitting will likely need a thorough going through. We're talking fuel system cleaning, new fluids all around, brake system inspection, and probably some rubber components replacement. At $8,500 OBO, you're not buying a ready-to-roll classic. You're buying a project that needs some love. However, these old Ford F-250s are getting harder to find, especially in 4x4 configuration, and the 360 engine is a solid power plant when properly maintained. If you're handy with tools and looking for a classic truck project that won't break the bank, this might be worth checking out. Just go in with your eyes open and expect to invest some time and money getting it back to reliable running condition. 6. Let me tell you about this sweet 1970 Chevy pickup that's up for grabs at $22,500. This is one of those rare finds that still wears its original orange paint, showing off what the seller describes as a beautiful patina. And in today's market, that natural wear is often more desirable than a fresh paint job. We're looking at the classic combination of a 350 V8 paired with a 350 automatic transmission, one of the most reliable powertrains Chevy ever put together. The truck's showing 43,000 miles, though the seller honestly mentions it's likely rolled over, which would make it 143,000 miles. What's really catching my eye here is the seller's claim about the truck's solid bones. No rust in those typically problematic areas like the rockers, floor, and cab corners. That's huge for a 53-year-old truck. They've made one change from original, swapping in a cushion rim steering wheel because the original was cracked, which is a sensible upgrade for drivability. The truck comes with power steering and drum brakes, typical for the era, and apparently runs down the road great. The seller mentions it could make a great short box conversion candidate, though personally, I'd be tempted to preserve it as is given its survivor status. At $22,500, while it's not cheap, you're paying for originality and solid metal. Two things that are getting harder to find in these classic Chevys. Just remember to verify that rust-free claim in person, as these old trucks can sometimes hide surprises. 7. Let me tell you about this 1984 GMC Sierra that's popped up for $16,000. This is one of those time capsule situations. We're looking at an all-original 4x4 short bed with the 5.0L V8. That's the 305 for those keeping track. And it's got some interesting aspects we need to discuss. Let's be real here. While the seller lists it in excellent condition, they're also honest about some issues. The two-tone gray and white paint is very faded and needs attention, which is pretty common for these 80s GMCs. We're looking at a base model with manual windows and the original AM/FM cassette radio, which honestly adds to its charm if you're into originality. The odometer shows 138,500 miles, which seems believable for its age, and the current owner has basically just used it for neighborhood cruising and park visits with the kids. What's particularly interesting is that even the windshield is original. That's pretty rare for a nearly 40-year-old truck. Now, about that $16,000 price tag, while these square-body GMCs have been climbing in value, this is getting up there for a base model with faded paint, even with 4x4 and the desirable short bed configuration. The originality factor is cool, but you'll need to factor in paintwork if you want it looking fresh again. For the right collector who appreciates original, unmodified trucks from this era, it might be worth considering. Just make sure to check all the usual rust spots and mechanical systems, as these old 4x4s can hide some expensive surprises. 8. Let me tell you about this interesting 1984 Chevy K10 that's up for $13,500. This isn't your typical square body. We're looking at a 6.2L diesel with a manual SM 465 transmission, which is already a pretty unique combination. And here's the California bonus. No smog checks required. The seller has clearly put some serious work into this truck. Let's break down all the fresh components. We're talking new brakes all around, drums, shoes, rotors, pads, a completely refreshed AC system with R134 conversion, new fuel tanks, both of them, with new senders, and a rebuilt transmission with a new clutch setup. The interior hasn't been neglected either. New carpet, seat cover, dash pad, and headliner. What's really catching my eye is the claim of no rust, with solid floors and rockers. That's huge for these old trucks. The odometer shows 122K miles, and the seller's honest about it having rolled over, so we're looking at 222K plus miles realistically. Now, while it's currently rocking that 6.2L diesel, the seller's pointing out it's perfect for an LS swap while maintaining that sweet, smog-exempt status in California. That's actually a pretty smart selling point. At $13,500 OBO, considering all the recent work and the fact that it's a rust-free square body, which are getting harder to find, the price isn't outrageous in today's market. The 6.2 diesel isn't everyone's favorite engine, but with all these updates and maintenance items addressed, this could be a solid buy for someone looking for a unique square body or planning that LS swap. 9. Let me tell you about this 1984 GMC Sierra that's popped up for a pretty interesting price of $3,250. Now, when you see a price this low for a running and driving square body in today's market, you've got to pay attention. We're looking at a one-owner California truck, which usually means less rust concerns, with a robust 5.7L V8, that's the 350 for those who speak old school, paired with an automatic transmission. The odometer shows 127,000 miles, which isn't bad at all for these workhorses. Here's what's really interesting. The seller claims they've invested over $7,000 in repairs and maintenance over the last 2 years and has the service records to prove it. That's actually a good sign because it means someone's been taking care of this old girl, and having those service records is gold when buying an older vehicle. At $3,250, this price is surprisingly low for a running and driving square body, especially one with documented maintenance. Either there's something we're not seeing in the limited description, or this could be one of those rare, genuine deals where someone just wants to move it along quickly. Just remember, even with all that recent maintenance, we're still talking about a 39-year-old truck, so go in with realistic expectations. But man, at this price point, if it's as described, someone's going to get themselves a sweet deal on a classic GMC. 10. Let me tell you about this 1970 Dodge W200 Power Wagon that's up for $14,000. This is one of those classic workhorses that's clearly received some serious mechanical love recently, and I've got to break down all the important details for you. We're looking at a 318 V8, paired with a 4-speed manual, a robust combination that's known for reliability. The drivetrain is serious business with a Dana 60 rear and Dana 44 front end. And here's the good part. The Dana 60 has been rebuilt with a Yukon Grizzly Sure Grip. That's quality stuff, folks. The seller's been thorough with maintenance and improvements, having professional shops do the work. We're talking a complete brake system overhaul, rebuilt steering components, new U-joints, rebalanced drivelines, and even a record original radiator. Les Schwab threw on new 10-ply 16-inch tires, which aren't cheap. The 318 engine has received all the crucial maintenance items like timing chain, gaskets, and water pump. At $14,000, you're paying for all that recent mechanical work and the fact that it's a legitimate power wagon that's ready to hit the road. Everything works, including all lights, and it's fully street legal with current registration. The fact that they've used reputable shops for the work, Kaiser Automotive, Max Radiator, B&G Glass, adds some confidence to the maintenance claims. 11. Let me tell you about this 1975 Chevy C20 that's popped up for $7,900. Now this is interesting because we're looking at a big block beast. It's got the mighty 454 under the hood, which is always a desirable option in these old trucks. The seller's being pretty straightforward here, listing the condition as fair and honestly acknowledging it's a 50-year-old truck. The odometer shows 52,312 miles, but as with most classics of this age, that number should be taken with a grain of salt. It's wearing its original green paint, and while the seller mentions it has lots of new parts, they don't specify which ones. That's something you'd want to ask about. What makes this interesting is that it's a C20, 3/4 ton, with the 454. That's a pretty stout combination that was built to work. The seller says it starts up and runs good, which is promising. But with any truck this age, you'll want to check all the usual suspects: frame rust, cab corners, floor pans, and transmission condition. At $7,900, considering it's got the desirable 454 engine and it's a running, driving example, the price isn't outrageous in today's market, especially if those new parts are significant mechanical components. However, given the fair condition rating, you should expect this to be a project that needs some TLC rather than a fully sorted truck. 12. Let me tell you about this beast of a 1978 Ford F-250 that's up for $18,000. This isn't your average 70s Ford. We're looking at a seriously modified rig with some impressive specs under the hood and underneath. Let's start with the power plant. It's rocking a rebuilt 460C big block that's been bored .060 over, topped with Edelbrock aluminum heads and a Torker high-rise intake. That's a serious performance setup. The power runs through a 4-speed manual with a married NP 205 transfer case. That's one of the toughest transfer cases ever made, folks. The suspension setup is aggressive with an 8-inch lift plus a 3-inch body lift, rolling on 37-inch tires. It's got a Dana 44 up front and a locker in the rear, with fresh shocks all around. That's a proper off-road setup. Now, let's be real about the issues because the seller's being honest here. The cab corners are a little crusty, typical for these old Fords. The front drive shaft needs to be installed. There's a seal issue at the front output yoke, and the rear main seal is leaking oil. These are all fixable issues, but they'll need attention. The good news is the frame is reportedly solid, which is crucial on a lifted truck like this. With 78,000 miles showing, you'll want to verify if that's original or not, and note that it's carrying a rebuilt title. At $18,000 OBO, you're paying for those performance mods and the lift setup more than originality. For someone looking for a built 70s Ford with some real muscle under the hood, this could be interesting. Just budget for those seal repairs and drive shaft installation. 13. Let me tell you about this 1972 GMC stepside that's up for grabs at $12,500. These old stepsides are getting harder to find, especially in good condition, and this one's got some interesting features worth discussing. We're looking at the classic 350 V8 paired with a Powerglide transmission, a simple and reliable combination. The owners added an Edelbrock carburetor and headers, which should give it a bit more pep and a nice sound. The odometer shows 59,902 miles, but as with most classics this age, that number might have rolled over. What's particularly noteworthy is the body condition. The seller claims it's in really good shape with nearly no rust, which is pretty rare for these old trucks. They specifically mention that all quarter panels are intact and the doors shut good. These are important points because door fit is often a good indicator of frame and body integrity. The truck wears a blue paint job and apparently has good tread left on the tires. While the description is pretty basic, the emphasis on good body condition is significant because rust repair on these old trucks can get expensive fast. At $12,500, you're in the ballpark for a solid 72 step-side, especially if the body is as good as described. Just remember to verify all those nearly no rust claims in person. These old GMCs are known for hiding rust in certain spots. 14. Let me tell you about this 1977 Chevy K 2500 Silverado that's popped up for $22,990. Now, I've got to be honest, this listing is surprisingly bare bones for a truck commanding this kind of money. While they claim it's fully loaded, they don't actually specify what that means. What we do know is that it's a heavy-duty K 2500 model with four-wheel drive and an automatic transmission paired to a V8 engine, though they don't specify which V8, could be a 350, 400, or even a 454. The odometer shows 30,041 miles, but without any supporting documentation, it's hard to verify if those are original miles on a 46-year-old truck. The truck wears brown paint, but we don't know if it's original or a respray. Being a Silverado trim level, it should have come with more luxury features than the base models, but again, no specifics are provided. At nearly $23,000, this is serious money for a 77 K 2500. And honestly, we'd need a lot more information to justify that price tag. While these square-body Chevys have been climbing in value, and a clean K 2500 Silverado can command good money, potential buyers should definitely request more details about the truck's condition, history, and what makes it fully loaded. 15. Let me tell you about this 1978 Chevy 3/4 ton that's up for $7,250. This one's got some interesting aspects that make it worth a look, especially if you're in California where emissions can be a headache with older vehicles. First off, the seller's being upfront about the odometer being broken, showing 1,000 miles, which is honest. But what's really catching my attention is the mechanical work that's been done. We're looking at a newer 350 engine, box stock, which means standard specs, and a professionally rebuilt TH400 transmission with a heavy-duty torque converter that still carries a 1-year warranty. That's a nice safety net. Plus, both axles have been professionally rebuilt, which is a significant investment. For California folks, here's a big plus. It's already smog-checked and passed with current registration. That's huge because getting older 4x4S to pass California smog can be a real challenge. The seller mentions it's never been wrecked, which is always good to hear on these old trucks. It's wearing brown paint, but we don't know if that's original or a respray. At $7,250, considering the mechanical refreshing that's been done and the fact it's smog legal in California, this could be a decent deal for someone looking for a usable classic 4x4. The TH400/350 combination is one of the most reliable powertrains Chevy ever put together, and with fresh rebuilds, this truck should have plenty of life left in it. 16. Let me tell you about this 1985 Chevy El Camino that's listed for $21,000. Now, I've got to be honest, this listing is surprisingly sparse on details for a vehicle carrying this kind of price tag, especially coming from a dealer. What we know is that it's a late model El Camino with the V8 option, though they don't specify which V8, could be the 305 or 350, paired with an automatic transmission. The odometer shows 63,740 miles, and it's wearing what they're calling a beige color, though it's listed as custom in the paint category. Here's where we need to be real. While $21,000 might seem steep for an 85 El Camino, these final year models have been climbing in value. However, without more information about its condition, restoration history, or any modifications, it's hard to justify this price point. The dealer lists it in excellent condition, but we'd need to see detailed photos and documentation to verify that claim. The VIN confirms it's a genuine 85 El Camino, and being from Colorado, rust might be less of an issue than in some other regions. However, potential buyers should definitely request more information about its history and condition before considering this price point. 17. Let me tell you about this interesting 1954 Ford F-100 project that's up for $4,800. And folks, this one's definitely a project. The seller's being completely upfront about what we're looking at here. This is a disassembled truck that was torn down for a frame-off restoration that never got completed. The good news? All the parts are there, including a 351 Windsor engine and C4 automatic transmission, though both need rebuilding. That's a nice upgrade from the original drivetrain, and they've already installed the cross members to accommodate this modern powertrain. The cab and bed are on dollies and have been kept covered, which is actually pretty thoughtful for storage. Now let's talk about the bodywork that's already been done. The front quarter panels had rust through and have been replaced with aftermarket panels that are already welded in place. Beyond that, they're claiming it's mostly just surface rust elsewhere. The truck shows 55,470 miles from its time before being stored since the early 1970s. At $4,800, you're basically buying a complete project that someone else has already started. It comes with all the parts and a clear title, which is crucial. The price isn't unreasonable for a complete 54 F-100, even in pieces, especially considering the 351W/C4 combo is included. However, be realistic. This is going to be a serious undertaking. You'll need space, time, money, and skills, or good connections with skilled people, to complete this restoration. But hey, these 54 F-100s are absolutely beautiful when finished, and this could be a solid foundation for someone ready to take on the challenge. 18. We're taking a closer look at a 1983 GMC Sierra K 1500 that's currently up for grabs on Craigslist. This classic square-body pickup is priced at $5,900. But before you rush to grab your wallet, let's dive into the details. First off, the seller is being upfront about the condition of this truck. It's been parked for about a decade, so don't expect it to be in pristine shape. The good news is that the fuel tank and tires were replaced not long before it was stored away. The truck sports some sweet GM rally wheels wrapped in BF Goodrich all-terrain tires that have virtually no wear on the tread. However, keep in mind that while the tires were new when the truck was parked, they're not brand spanking new anymore. Now, let's talk about what you're really getting for your money. The price is for the rolling chassis, which comes with a 454 Chevy big block motor and transmission transfer case. The seller is firm on the price at $5,500, so don't expect to haggle too much. It's important to note that this GMC is not currently running or driving, so you'll need to bring your own truck or trailer to load it up and haul it away. The seller is located near Osseo, Minnesota, so keep that in mind when making your plans. The truck comes with a clean and clear title in the seller's name and has Minnesota collector plates. Under the hood, you'll find a 1970s 454 engine with hooker headers, which is a nice touch for those who appreciate classic power. 19. We've got a real treat for you. A 1970 Chevy C10 that's up for grabs on Craigslist. This classic pickup is priced at $7,000, and the seller is pretty firm on that price. They need it gone, so if you're interested, you better act fast. Now let's talk about what makes this C10 so special. According to the seller, this truck is all original, which is pretty impressive for a vehicle that's over 50 years old. It's got a factory 350 V8 engine under the hood, which is a great power plant for this classic pickup. And get this, it's got a 3-on-the-tree manual transmission. That's right, you'll be shifting gears the old-fashioned way with this baby. The seller claims that the truck is in excellent condition, which is always a good sign. However, it's important to keep in mind that excellent condition can mean different things to different people. Without seeing the truck in person, or getting a more detailed description, it's hard to say for sure just how excellent it really is. One thing to note is that the odometer reads 95,000 miles. While that's not necessarily a deal breaker, it's definitely something to keep in mind. A truck with that many miles on it is bound to have some wear and tear, even if it's been well maintained over the years. Overall, this 1970 Chevy C10 seems like a solid classic pickup with a lot of potential. The fact that it's all original is definitely a selling point, and that factory 350 V8 is sure to put a smile on your face every time you fire it up. The 3-on-the-tree manual transmission is a cool feature that adds to the truck's vintage charm. 20. We've got a real gem to share with you. A 1982 Chevrolet Silverado that's currently up for sale on Craigslist. This beauty is priced at $24,500, and let me tell you, it's worth every penny. First off, let's talk about the condition of this truck. The seller describes it as like new, and based on the extensive list of upgrades and replacements, it's easy to see why. This Silverado has been thoroughly restored from top to bottom, and it shows. Under the hood, you'll find a freshly rebuilt 350 V8 engine that's sure to provide plenty of power and reliability. Paired with that engine is a rebuilt 700R automatic transmission, ensuring smooth and effortless shifting. And if you're worried about staying cool on those hot summer days, don't be. This truck has a new air conditioning compressor, hoses, and dryer, so you can cruise in comfort. But the upgrades don't stop there. This Silverado has been outfitted with new 20-inch rims and tires, giving it a modern and stylish look. The power steering and brakes have been completely replaced, ensuring that you'll have no trouble maneuvering this beast of a truck. And if you're a fan of that classic rumble, you'll love the all-new dual exhaust system. Step inside the cab, and you'll find an interior that's been completely redone. New carpet, seats, headliner, and dash pad. It's all there. And with power windows and locks that actually work, you won't have to struggle with manual cranks and keys.